Who are we voting for? Meet the candidates. Who Are We Voting For was created so we could understand who the candidates are and what they are about. This is not an endorsement for any candidate. This is for the voter to be more educated about who we're voting for.
I'm Tawana Purnell. I am a retired educator. I was born on the Hill in Pittsburgh. Spent all of my time in my educational experience as Robert L. Vann, Frick School, 1 year at Shenley, and then I attended Peabody High School, graduating in 1971. I was admitted to the first class of women at Bowdoin College in Brunswick, Maine. I spent 2 years before transferring to Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia, and where I got a degree in philosophy and minor in English and graduated with honors in the class of 1975. This year, in a few weeks, I will be celebrating my 50th Golden Girl reunion at Spelman, and also will be going to the Bowdoin reunion, of which I am still a member of the class. I spent time after graduation in Atlanta working for the city of Atlanta. Maynard Jackson was just elected mayor, and he had an initiative with 1% of city funds that went to the arts. A former professor of mine invited me to work with him in the Bureau of Cultural Affairs. I stayed before going to Howard University, where I was a graduate student and the graduate assistant in the philosophy department for 2 years. Shortly thereafter, I married and had 3 children who were all born and raised in the Washington, D.C. area. My family and I lived in Tacoma Park, Maryland. And I began working as a teacher at the beginning because I got to spend time with my children and my family. And I didn't have family in the Maryland area because everyone, my brothers, my mother, my aunties, cousins, everybody was still in Pittsburgh. But my husband at the time, his work was in DC, so we stayed there. Teaching has been something I've always done. When we were really little, I used to play school, and I would have students sit on one step, and if they got the question right, they could move up. But by the time I got to Spelman and to college, teaching was, and I quote, for those who can't. So it was not an admired profession. Young women were too smart to go into teaching. There were so many options. People were throwing away their bras, like we can do anything. But teaching has always been in my blood and in my spirit, and I'm really good at it. So I began teaching. I was a certified English teacher, grades 6 through 12 with the state of Maryland, and worked a little bit part-time. I taught Sunday school. I did all of those things. But teaching was, again, really a part of my spirit, and I realized I had a knack for it. By the time my children were all grown up, and I had spent many years as a teacher in both public and independent schools, I was honored to have earned what was called a Klingenstein Fellowship. I was at the time working in an all-boys school in DC, and we were losing too many boys for non-academic reasons. And our school at the time did not have a counselor. We just sort of, those boys for some reason found their way to my classroom. It was a safe space, if you will. That I'm calling it a safe space now that I know what that is. So the boys we would lose were academically bright and ambitious, but the social life of the school was not conducive to their success. So I went off to the Klingenstein Fellowship at Columbia University Teachers College and earned my master's degree. And my thesis was creating the right kind of social environment in boys' schools so that they are successful. Because if they are academically smart, but they don't feel welcomed and appreciated in the school itself, they will leave or they will fail. So that work kind of prompted me to look at the way students were interacting with each other, and the way faculty were interacting, and the way principals, the way schools were treating boys at the time who considered themselves the other or the outsiders. When I finished that work, I was asked to be the division director in an all-girls school, and I did that for the next 12 years. So I had been teaching in the boys' school for 12 years, and then I became a division director for 12 years. During my time in the boys' school, there was the first black bishop of the DMV, of DC. His name was Bishop Walker. He died unexpectedly and suddenly, and we wanted a way to celebrate him. So we knew that he loved education. So we started with the idea of opening a school. We'll call it the Bishop Walker School for Boys. At the time, it was literally just an idea. We had no students, no teachers, no space, no money, nothing, but we knew we wanted to have a school. So I was on the founding board of the Bishop Walker School for Boys, which now, 15 or so years later, is thriving. It's a magical place, and boys are doing really well. It was situated in DC, what we called across the river in Ward 7 and 8, because we wanted those boys to have an experience not unlike the boys in Northwest DC, et cetera. That's sort of a different little story about demographics. So that work was very gratifying for me. In about 15 years ago, actually almost exactly to the date, 15 years ago, my mom passed away, and by now my own 3 children are grown. They are nicely educated. They're living their lives in New York and Washington. But when my mom passed away, I wanted to come home. So I came home to Pittsburgh. And interestingly, no matter at what point somebody would say, "Where are you from?" If I was out of town, I always said Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is always home. It's a special place for me. So I got a job at a school here. And when I got here, I realized Pittsburgh felt very different from DC. It felt different from other places. It felt, and this is what one parent said to me, it feels like Pittsburgh is stuck in the 50s. And I kind of knew what she meant because there was a palpable distinction between blacks and whites, and people just, it seemed uncomfortably segregated. And it also felt a little bit racist, if I might say that, with some sort of candor. So I wondered how children were managing here. The school where I worked, yes, I did see elements of distasteful behaviors in adults and children that was concerning to me. But I also realized in the public schools, I watched a sort of decline in the academic ability of the students, and I really wanted to do something about that. I didn't know how or what to do. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. The skills I bring to the position would be, first and foremost, a parent. I know what it's like to be a parent of children. I know how complicated decision-making is when you have 3 or 1 child and you're trying to find the best, safest space for your child to spend time in, right? And so that part, I get it. And I remember someone saying, I think parents make better teachers than non-parents. I don't totally agree with that, but I do know that it does sort of help, because I would treat every child as though he or she were my child, and I would hope that other people would treat my children, et cetera, the same way. Next, I've been a teacher. So having taught, again, I may have said this before, but there is a certain skill set that you bring. Number one, you have to love children and be really skilled in sharing and bringing out the best in the child. And his or her intellect must be nurtured and respected. Next, I also bring the skill of being a division director and or principal. So leading a group of faculty members and students and their families in a culture and a climate that, again, brings out the best. So that begins to build a kind of collaborative spirit among everyone So not only when you're teaching and you're only teaching students and trying to appeal to their intellects and social lives, when you become a division director or principal, at that point, the parents and your faculty become also like your students so that you're also nurturing them and building their professionalism. And finally, the one other skill I think I bring to the position is having served on several, at this point, boards. And board work is a collaborative effort. I think of our board, of every board I've worked on, as a think tank. So we're thinking of strategies, we're thinking of policies, we're thinking of all the constituency groups, we're thinking of financial concerns and social concerns in the community and political. So it's a very sort of broad way of looking at an institution. So I have served on some boards for many years. I currently am on the board of Life Milstein Academy here under the aegis of Woodland Hills School District. I'm on the advisory board of the Bishop Walker School, still in Washington. I served many years on a national board called the Center for Spiritual and Ethical Education. I also was the Mid-Atlantic Episcopal Schools Association Executive Director briefly. And I've served on other boards. But board work is fascinating, and even though you become, with each of these steps, a little more distant from the actual student, your influence and impact is greater because you're making policies, because you're thinking of each child, even as a board member. So I think I bring those skills and a passion and love for children. Several months ago, a friend called and said, actually, no, she texted and said, would you be interested in running for school board? And I thought about it, and I thought, no, I don't think so. And I talked to a couple of friends, and one friend said, oh, Tawana, would you like to spend time being yelled at all the time? And that's hard work, and there's no pay. And then I heard Michelle Obama say, do something. And I realized then, talking to my children and to people who knew me really well, they said, that is the perfect work for you. You would be so good at it. And then I literally put the idea in my mind for weeks before I finally made a decision to do it, because I realized I'm not very much a political person. I'm not used to trying to get people to like me or vote for me or approve of my work. That it should hopefully stand on its own. But I realize that's part of the obligation. If you're going to be a school board member, you have to promote yourself and tell people who you are and about your passions and your expertise and your wisdom. So I started thinking back and saying, what do the children deserve? They deserve, when I realized Sylvia Wilson was not running, and she had done a phenomenal job, I realized it would be hard to fill her shoes, but I wanted to try, and I thought the community deserves somebody with my wisdom, I'm going to use the word somebody else said, my vibe. I don't know. It's really, again, hard to talk about with my own self, but that I can do it. My brother said, you, of the three of us, I have two brothers, have the right temperament for the work. They were very proud. So my children said, Mom, you'd be amazing at that. You just have to throw your hat in the ring, because this is what you are sort of meant to do. And the more I have learned about the position and the responsibilities, I am, in fact, very much prepared for this work, and can't wait to get my hands on the issues and start resolving conflicts and figuring out how to build collaborations on the board level around issues pertaining to improving the educational experiences of our children. I grew up in the Hill District of Pittsburgh. We were identifiably impoverished. We had nothing. I'm from a single parent family. There was nothing written in the books that would suggest a successful life. But here I am. As far as I'm concerned, there are no excuses for our children, no excuses for not succeeding. I know there are things in the way, there are obstacles, all of which can be overcome with hard work, belief, faith in those children and the right resources. Pittsburgh is per capita the fourth most philanthropic city in America. We have so many nonprofit organizations. Our teachers are generally well paid. On average, they're earning enough. So it's not about teachers not earning enough or not having enough community support. The student-teacher ratio is relatively low. And we also are spending, our budget is really large. So there's a lot of money. I am baffled by the fact that Pittsburgh's children are not, their needs are not being met. I can't blame the children. I can't say they're not doing what they do. We owe them a lot more than they're getting. It is really hard to watch children fall behind in testing and not succeeding. There is no excuse, but there are reasons. And as a board member, I would really like to get to the gist of the matter. I don't know what the elephant in the room is, but I'm really interested in peeling back all of the layers and finding out what is happening and making decisions that will influence and affect our children. There's no reason they can't succeed, and they will succeed because we're going to do something very right that clearly hasn't been done before. Thank you. I'm hoping that the people in District 1 vote for me as their representative to the school board because I am experienced, I am passionate, I am wise, I am thoughtful, and I'm a natural collaborator. I'm a really good listener. So I'm hoping that as we build our lines of communication between the families, the schools, the community, and the board, that we will be able to build the kind of school community that all of the children deserve. Some of it will be political, a lot of it will be social, and I'm hoping that all the relationships that we build, all the bridges we cross, will create the Pittsburgh, the livable city that we claim it is, but that it will begin to look like that city for everyone who lives here and not just some. Please vote for me. I would appreciate your support, and I promise to make a difference.